What can we learn from insects and vertebrates about the transition of intelligence? We are in a privileged situation today as Orange Capital Partners to be witnessing one of the large transitions in evolutionary biology. It's the transition from analog to digital intelligence. And we want to give a little overview over the history of transitions in evolutionary biology and connect things that happened in the past with what's happening today and hopefully learn a few things. This is a very exciting topic for us, and we're super excited to be connecting scientists and practitioners from various fields in this very, very important transition. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 21st. This is Krim Delco. Quick update, the market is still open. It's Monday morning. We are up 1.5%. The main performance comes from the CRISPR index and also Microsoft. The rest is roughly flat. Now let's get back into it. The transition from analog to digital intelligence. In our view, this is one of the large transitions in evolutionary biology. I mean, we're not just here talking about a market opportunity. This is massive. This is something people will talk about, hundreds, thousands of years from now. And we are witnessing this transition right now. So it's unbelievable. It's very, very exciting to be part of that. And as hedge fund managers, not just are we able to witness that, but we also actually have investable companies, namely Tesla, which are very, very active in this field. Before I go into the elaborations of today, I just want to make the point that we believe that AI and the evolution of intelligence is the single most important factor that drives our excitement about Tesla. It is also the riskiest one. It's the one where I would say they have the least safety or margin of safety. That means they can fail. And there's other things that they can do: sell cars, electric cars, solar panels, storage, connect cars, sell ADAS software and advanced ADAS software. But if they can manage to develop intelligence, and we believe that they are the best position to develop intelligence through the self-driving car, then they can really leapfrog into a situation that not just from an investor's perspective will be exciting, but also from a societal perspective. Now, let me elaborate a little bit what we're thinking. So if we go back 380 million years ago, this is borrowing from a paper by Malcolm MacIver. He is making the argument that invertebrates transitioned to land. They had vision sensory systems which worked really well on land. The vertebrates, i.e. the fish, already had eyes in the water, but in the water the eyes are not very useful because water and light and the break of light and all that, it just doesn't give you a lot of far sight. On land, you have a lot further sight, even, it could be a couple of meters, it could be a couple of, dozens of meters, but you have more sight, and therefore, that's his argument, you can start to develop a planning system of action reaction. You can start developing a brain circuitry that allows you to play the game theoretic scenarios. If my prey is here and I'm here and I walk left, what is my prey gonna do? Like those types of scenarios, according to MacIver, are the foundation of planning and the brain circuitry for planning, which potentially are the foundation for the kind of intelligence that we humans have, and also maybe the foundations of consciousness. I don't want to go this far now and talk about consciousness, but I think fundamentally, if you look at this type of brain circuitry and the ability to plan as a reaction to the environment, is contrasted to the brain circuitry that was on land before the vertebrates invaded, and that was the invertebrates, the insects. The insects also can react, but they act based on memory. So, or what MacIver calls habitual planning. So they memorize their environment, and they have a map in their brains about where they are and what they do, and they constantly go back and forth and do their thing. And if something changes in the environment, they usually get confused, they die, and then somehow the hive survives and learns the new or environment, which in today's lingo just means they update their map and then keep doing this memory-based planning versus the situation-based planning that the vertebrates developed. And I like this analogy very much because it reminds me of what's going on today. Just a week ago, there was the CVPR20 workshop in Seattle. It's a virtual workshop, but still kind of based in Seattle. Anyway, long story short, there was a presentation by Andrej Karpathy, the head of AI at Tesla, and completely unrelated. He talks about the difference between Tesla and Waymo, and it is exactly the difference between the invertebrates and the vertebrates. He's saying that Waymo, and these are his words, and of course Waymo should have the ability to counter that, but let's just leave it at this now. Waymo is relying on HD maps and the question, where am I? And then updating the maps and guiding the car through the maps. So Waymo is using memory-based planning to drive its self-driving cars around. It's a very rigid system. It's a system on rails. It's very safe, but again, it's a system on rails. It is not reactive. Tesla, by contrast, is developing an AI and a hardware also, so a whole circuitry, including hardware and networks, that has the aim of being completely reactive. That means of not even asking the question, where am I? And not even asking the question, what might the others do? Simply just constantly reacting to the environment, and of course following a certain trajectory, so to get from A to B. So this is the analogy that I find very beautiful because it really fits into MacGyver's observations that he and his team developed theoretically and then also tested in a simulated sort of game on computers. So the theory that you have memory-based planning and situation-based planning, and the situation-based planning eventually led to the development of advanced intelligence. And we have the same happening in the self-driving car domain, where you have memory-based planning, which is, let's say, Waymo, and situation-based planning, which is Tesla. The memory-based planning is safer, easier to implement, but much harder to scale because, think about it, you constantly have to update if you want to do more than just being on rails in a city like Phoenix, but actually drive around everywhere in the world. That is really hard and almost impossible. On the other hand, the Tesla approach, the situation-based planning, of course, requires enormous amounts of compute power because you have to constantly compute the situation you're in and predict what you should do next. So there is, in the words of MacGyver, you have to build the circuitry, the brain circuitry, to be able to reactively plan, which is much harder. And that is also something that Andrej Karpathy admitted in the talk, that it is harder. We have Moore's law on our side, and we also have a dedicated engineering team with a vision to actually execute on that plan. Now, having said that, of course, the analogy is beautiful, and the conclusion of this is that we think that the Tesla approach eventually has a better chance to lead to a more general intelligence and also to a much more useful product, which, if you had a car that can act in most situations properly, you would have a much better service than, let's say, the Waymo service, which is very rigid and only works in certain geo-fenced areas, etc. On the other hand, of course, there is a power problem, a compute power problem, maybe a cost problem also. If you have to have that much compute power to really be able to fully self-drive, you might not be able to execute it at a decent price. Those are questions that Tesla is trying to solve. I think the company is in a definitely in uncharted waters, and I wouldn't bet on it in a sense that, oh, it's going to happen for sure. But I am betting on it as an investor because the upside is so immense if they can deliver on some sort of general artificial intelligence that is embodied in the car. So I'm not talking about anything else than a very intelligent car that can drive itself in most situations. Finally, also another thing that MacGyver puts out in his paper, which I think is very, very important, he talks about the environment which has to fit the kind of intelligence which is being evolved. So what he means is that the vertebrates, when they came on land, their vision system, for example, was not very useful in the desert because, well, there's not a lot of action in the desert because there's nothing going on. It's all just bare land, and there's the prey can't hide and stuff like that. The same thing applies for the jungle. The jungle is too complex, and planning based on vision really doesn't give you a lot of advantage. So, yeah, planning based on sort of memory, habitual uh, reaction, or a very, very short term reaction that means that you don't really plan much, you just sort of instinctively act, is more advantageous in the jungle. However, in the savanna, or in those intermediate type landscapes where there are obstacles, there are things that are maybe causing reason to think twice, and okay, what should I do? Where is the prey? Should I go here? Should I go there? So there's a little bit of obstacles, a little bit of complexity, but not too much. That was the best possible environment for this type of intelligence to evolve. And the analogy would be that it's the same for Tesla. If you take, let's say, the highway, which is the equivalent of the desert, well, the highway maybe is not the best place to develop intelligence, in the sense that you can get a very useful product, but we're not really that intelligent that's going on the highway. It's very useful, don't get me wrong, and I'm happy to use it. But to go and develop intelligence, you need a bit more complexity. On the other hand, the city is way too complex. So don't waste your time going to, downtown Manhattan or Calcutta or somewhere and try to figure that out. That's way too complex. Try to find intermediate complexities, such as maybe suburban streets, less complicated cities, and develop your intelligence there. We think Tesla's on the right path. We think AI is one of the big upsides of Tesla and could drive valuations much higher. And we are very excited about this. Thank you.